Good evening, everyone. I'm Kate Harrison, the Associate Dean of the Keese School, and I'm glad to welcome you this evening to the second presentation of our current semester. Bruce Adams, our speaker tonight, is a former Montgomery County Council president and a really big baseball fan. He is the founder of the Bethesda Big Train, our local summer collegiate baseball team that plays at Povich Field in Cabin John Park. And I can tell you from personal experience that games there are really summertime magic. Baseball up close and personal with the stands just feet away from the play, activities for kids, and the best hot dogs you'll find anywhere. But tonight, Bruce will focus on his particular interest in the baseball teams that Black residents of Montgomery County created during segregation, teams that became the center of civic life in these communities. Please welcome tonight Bruce Adams.
Get set up here. You gotta turn. Got it. You can hear me? Yes. Great. Happy Black History Month. I have this slide of bingo long, thinking that we'd have a much smaller group, and I would put some of the music from bingo long on my Spotify on my phone, but that's not going to reach you. So let me urge you tonight to go to your music collection and hit the bingo long, and you'll get a real spirit for the background of what we're doing here. First, I want to single out, I know there are many distinguished people here, but I want to single out three. John and Linda Daniel are the all-time fans of our Big Train baseball. I think John has been to possibly as many Big Train games over the last 25 seasons as I have, and I'm really appreciative of them for all their support, and they're undoubtedly the reason that I'm here. But I also want to single out Teresa Rios Wright, who's in the second row here. And when my boss, Ike Leggett, was county executive, he created basically the Montgomery County version of the Presidential Medal of Honor, Medal of Freedom, whatever. And it was for the most distinguished citizens of Montgomery County. And Teresa was one of the, I think, first 6 people that County Executive Leggett targeted. So Teresa, Teresa, you gotta wave. They gotta know where you are. She's bowing. She's so modest, but she's so great and been so great for so long. So thank you, Teresa, for being here. I appreciate that. I was hoping this morning I'd see Teresa. So I've been interested in the intersection of sports and civil rights since writing my senior thesis in college on Columbia University tried to commandeer a park next to the university in Morningside Park to build their own gym. And Harlem's emerging political leaders joined forces with students protesting the war in Vietnam and blocked the university's attempt for this land grab. And it was a fantastic story of community empowerment. In 2020, was the 100th anniversary of the founding of the Negro Leagues. And I've always believed that the Negro Leagues players and owners were a really significant part of the civil rights movement. I can't say it better than Martin Luther King said it, but he made this point that Jackie Robinson made my success possible. Without Jackie, I would not have been able to do what I did. So just think about that. So this talk is really part of something that I did in 2021 for the Montgomery County History Conference. I called it In Search of the Ball Fields of Montgomery's Black Communities. And this search project was one of my COVID projects in the last months of 2020. So there may be folks here who assume that black baseball began with Jackie Robinson. But blacks were playing baseball in the United States back in the 1860s. The indispensable Eileen McGuckian documents in her history of Rockville an annual game between Rockville's white and black teams at the turn of the century. But the color line was drawn, and no black played in the white major leagues from the Walker brothers in 1889 to Jackie Robinson in 1947. In the last half of the 19th century, when blacks made up 4 of every 10 residents of Montgomery County, formerly enslaved people formed more than 36 communities across the county. These historic black communities were isolated, and shamefully, public services were not equitably distributed. Some were ignored, others were bulldozed. I created this map for the presentation in 2021, and it outlines a lot of the fields that I found. So I certainly understood this history of Jim Crow, and I've known many of the communities that are on that map, but I was astonished, and actually I was honestly ashamed of myself to learn of the importance of, only a few years ago, to learn of the importance of baseball to these communities. So I was a baseball crazy kid growing up in Montgomery County in the 1950s and 60s, and some of the greatest baseball players in the world were playing 10 miles from my house. They were playing 3 miles from where you're sitting today, and I didn't know a thing about it until just a few years ago. So inspired by the 100th anniversary of the Negro Leagues, I started to talk to people about the need to document this important community history. My friend, the Reverend Tim Warner, confirmed the importance of this work and energized me to get busy when he told me that for many of Montgomery County's black communities, history is buried with the people. So I'm going to focus on what I call the golden age of Montgomery's black sandlot baseball from the late 1940s into the early 1960s. I'd like to go back further, and 2020 was certainly a very late time to start this research project, but there's incredibly limited amount of information about the black community teams playing across Montgomery County in the early decades of the 20th century. There's next to no documentation of this. So my mission since learning about this has been to make sure that this extraordinary story of Montgomery's black sandlots is not forgotten. So I want to tell you about what I found in my search for the ball fields of the black sandlots. This is a complicated story about how something undeniably wonderful resulted from something completely inexcusable. Along with I've said this, and when I first said it, I would say to people, is that fair? Can I say that? But here's what I'm going to say. It was along with the churches and the schools that baseball was one of the 3 pillars of these black communities in the middle decades of the 20th century. So the shame of segregation denied mid-century black and white athletes the opportunity to match their skills against the very best. But community support of sandlot teams in dozens of small communities across the county, from Emery Grove to Littonsville, from Scotland to Sandy Spring, demonstrated the extraordinary resilience and the entrepreneurial spirit of the black community. I know some of you are wondering, why was baseball a big deal in the black community? The sad answer for that is that blacks in Montgomery County in the 1950s, baseball was one of the few deals that they had. They were denied. You couldn't go to the movies, you couldn't go to the skating rink, you couldn't go to the restaurants. And so instead of being bitter and et cetera, it was like, okay, fine, we're going to figure out something that's really fun. Jim Offert once told County Cable Montgomery for a documentary done in the year 2000, baseball was the entertainment. It started out of necessity. It was one of the few places we could go. It didn't take much to get us excited because we didn't have much anyway. A good ball game on a Sunday afternoon was a big thing. So my friend Billy Gordon, who's my age, meaning he was a young kid when this was happening, and really knew all these people and went to all these games and is the most vital current person explaining to me what this was all about. Here's his description. On a Sunday afternoon, the entire African American community was there. So there's 36 of these communities post-Civil War. About 2/3 of them had their own community baseball teams, with their jerseys and everything, had their own fields. The folks who'd gone to church were there. Everybody else who loved the game showed up, from infants to the elderly. It was quite a scene. The preacher would be at the game, and the bootlegger would be there dispensing beverages. So I was talking to a Littonsville community leader, Charlotte Caulfield, and I see her as this political figure and this cultural figure. I don't think of her as a sports person at all. And so I kind of asked her, well, did you go to the games? She was so irritated with me. When all the guys were over there playing, that's where we went. The community turned out for the Linden Black Sox. We were a small neighborhood. We turned out for each other, and we would go to the different areas of the county to watch them play. So on Sunday afternoons, in 2/3 of 24 of these communities, there was a ball game in half of them, and the folks turned out. So again, 2020 was really late to start this research. Most of the players and business leaders who made the Black Sandlot experience in Montgomery County so special had died. And even in the golden age of the 50s and 60s, and this drove me crazy, very little memorabilia was maintained. So I'm just going to quickly go through with you what made this possible. In 1987, in a celebration of a guy you're going to hear more about, Clarence Pint Israel, the United Black Cultural Center produced a report. This was really helpful to me. They listed the communities and they listed the names of the players. So the teams were the Maryland Aztecs, based in Emery Grove, Scotland ACs, and the Scotland Eagles. This is not for the football team on Sunday. This is the Scotland Eagles jersey I'm wearing. The Rockville American Legion, Rockville ACs, Poolesville Evening Stars, the Stewarttown Stars, Sandy Spring All-Stars, and a team in Germantown. So in 2000, County Cable Montgomery produced a video that was really helpful with a bunch of interviews of people who were no longer with us by the time I was doing my research 20 years later. My friend Jim Offert, who I never talked a lot of Democratic politics with him, but I never talked to him about baseball because I didn't know anything about it until I found this year 2000 cable show. But in 2001, the Lincoln Park Historical Foundation in Rockville produced an extraordinarily detailed guide to African American sites and attractions, and this detailed sites in 36 communities and listed more than 24 what they called sandlot baseball fields. That was really helpful to me. Also in 2001, Montgomery Community Television produced a video from Montgomery County's Diamonds to the Negro Leagues. This focused on Pint Israel and some of the other players from Montgomery County who actually made it to the big leagues and was super helpful. In 2019, American University Museum hosted an exhibit, Plans to Prosper You, reflections of black resistance and resilience in Montgomery County's Potomac River Valley. And this included photos, equipment, and actually a Scotland Eagles jersey one of the players' daughters had and brought to that. So that was very inspiring. And in 2020, when I was doing this research, Sandy Springs Slave Museum hosted an exhibit on the Negro Leagues as part of the 100th anniversary initiative. And that featured, this is Don Conway, who's a great collector of the Negro League memorabilia, and included a uniform from the Rockville Legion team, which is one of the great teams in the Black Sandlots. So when I started my research, I was really focused on community teams that were, right near the church and right in the neighborhood that people could walk to after the game. That was the drill. You went to church in the morning, you went to a ball game in the afternoon. But I finally figured out, it took me a while, I was embarrassed by this, that there were African American businessmen who were the local equivalent of the owners of the entrepreneurs who created the legendary Negro Leagues. So right here in Montgomery County, we had our version of those business leaders. They were first and foremost businessmen. They didn't even all have teams. What they built is they built ballparks, and so they owned the best venues where the teams really wanted to play. So I broadened my research to look at what they did, because that's where the main action was, in the bigger ballparks built by Edward Johnson, William Wims, Charlie Harris, Joe Davis, and Buck Bailey. And they saw the success in the Negro Leagues, and they thought there was a business opportunity there. I didn't have this in my prepared remarks, but there was a tavern next to every one of those ballparks back in the day. So if you go just 3 miles from here to the Emery Grove Park, you'll find this plaque, which is one of the few reminders across Montgomery County of this amazing Black Sandlot experience. And this was, Emery Grove was the center of Montgomery's black baseball. This is called Johnson's Park, was built there. So Emery Grove was an old camp mission ground, and so there were religious revivals there all the time. And Mr. Johnson built what would have looked to you like a minor league ballpark in the 1920s. I mean, it had the big scoreboard. It had some dugouts. It had a concession stand, and I'll tell you more about that soon. But this is where barnstorming, it wasn't just these top athletes here in Montgomery County, but it was barnstorming Negro League teams. They'd play in Baltimore, they'd play in Washington, and they'd come by and they would play at Johnson's Park. Sorry, they had lights, which is really important. Only 2 of the ballparks I'm going to tell you about had lights. This is an extraordinary place, and you can go there now and you can see the ballpark, and I've walked it and I've measured it, and I realize home plate is about where it was, and you can see the short porch with trees in left field, and there's a big important cemetery behind there. Apparently in World War II, this was a historic site where they had some war prisoners and stuff. So if you're a history buff and you like to walk and you like to look around, go over and check out Emery Grove, and this plaque is right at the top of the park. So Edward Johnson built this ballpark in 1947. One of the guys who's still around, who played for the Scotland Eagles, Eddie Dove, such a cool guy, he's a third baseman for the Eagles, he told me, he looked really serious at me. He said, when you played at Johnson's Park, you felt you were a pro. So that's how cool Johnson's Park was. They would draw 1,000 people on Memorial Day weekend for a game, for 2 games. They'd have a twilight doubleheader. They'd play an afternoon game, then they'd all have a big picnic, and they'd play a second game, and they'd fill the place with 1,000 people. So I was, one of my great failures, I was determined to find a picture of Johnson's Park. That was going to be the highlight of my presentation to the Montgomery History Conference. I looked everywhere. I talked to all these families. The Johnson family apparently had tons of photos of Johnson's Park, and they lent it to a friend, and it has not been seen since. We don't have, this is so sad, we do not have a picture of this magnificent Johnson's Park. The best I can do is one of my favorite pictures down in the Smithsonian collection, Baseball at Night by Morris Cantor in 1934. When I close my eyes and I think of what I think was going on at Johnson's Park, this is what it would have looked like. One of the best things to happen to me on this venture was, I told you about my pastor friend who pastors in Emery Grove, Tim Warner. He got me together by Zoom with a guy named Richard Tyler. Richard grew up in Emery Grove. Richard's dad owned the community store. His parents ran the concession stand at Johnson's Park. Richard was really enthusiastic supporter of this. He grew up there as a kid, and he did not just this one drawing, but he did several drawings of what the ballpark grandstand looked like for me. And so this is the best sense of what we have. So you combine this with the piece of art, and I'm sad, but that's as good as I'm going to get. Second stop on the trip is Joe Davis's Oak Haven. That was in Boyd's. They had a dance hall, And they served apparently a sensational full dinner after the Sunday games. So that was the draw at Oak Haven. No lights, no night game, but just a scrumptious meal after the game. And the folks from the Boys Historical Society tell me that Oak Haven was on the west side of the White Ground Road. This is not a great picture, but an aerial photo. So we can find these places. Wims Meadow in Clarksburg is now part of the Little Bennett Regional Park. And there is Montgomery Parks put that plaque explaining the history of it. And I did. Somebody walked me there and found it there. Sadly, when I got there, and I'm not going to out them by showing a picture of it, but it hadn't been taken care of. And it was really hard to read, and it had mud and crud all over it, and that was really sad to me. But again, there are a few memorials of this across Montgomery County. One of the other great ones, click too quick, the Harris Meadow in Stewarttown was the home of the Stewarttown Stars. It's now located where Watkins Mill Elementary School is today. Now, Sandy Spring produced lots of great players, and several people who actually played in the Negro Leagues, and some really good teams that would go over to Johnson's Park, and they would play against the Negro League teams, barnstorming through. But I was absolutely baffled. I looked at all the maps. I was trying to figure out, well, where did the Sandy Spring team play? I could not find a really cool ballpark near Sandy Spring. And then finally, some folks at the Sandy Spring Slave Museum helped me figure out that the field was actually in East Norbeck. So hardly walking distance from the Sandy Spring churches. But it is here, and that blue star is where Page's ball field was. It became known as Bailey's Field because of the entrepreneur Buck Bailey, who operated the nearby Bailey's Playground. So these African-American businessmen would put a playground one place, they'd put a place to have a scrumptious dinner another place, they would have taverns next to the ballparks. The ballparks became a real center of activity in the black community across Montgomery County. This one, whether you call it Page's or Bailey's, was the second one that actually had lights. I love these guys. My buddy Eddie Dove is in this picture with his friends, and when he played back in the 60s, and I said, Eddie, what was the backstop like? Chicken wire. So Scotland, which I love, they didn't have a Johnson's Park or any one of these. They had what probably the other 20 communities had, which is they threw up some chicken wire and they put a little bench for the dugout, and basically the fans, they sat on the grass, or they stood, or they brought their folding chairs to cheer on the home team. And the bootlegger was in the back, and he had provisions for them. So I am going to confess for this next picture. So Skill Hill in Emory Grove, I got to tell you about. It's not far from Johnson's Park. It probably shouldn't be in this lecture because it was a softball field, and the men's teams didn't play there with the 90-foot diamonds. But there are three reasons it's here. One, it's a great name, Skill Hill. Second, I had to figure out a way to show my favorite team photo of this entire research project. These are the Heartbreakers. And my friend Linda Plummer, who is today and has been for a long time the NAACP chapter in Montgomery County, the president, she sent me this photo of her 1960s softball team. And then third, the famous Dewdrop Inn was adjacent to Skill Hill. Y'all need to have a lecture on the Dewdrop Inn. Have you all, who's heard of the Dewdrop Inn? Okay, everybody needs to hear about the Dewdrop Inn. So my friend Billy Gordon had told me about this. Again, he's like 16 years old when this is happening, so he can't get into the Dewdrop Inn. But another one of these black businessmen had this building, and again, like the Negro League teams that would play in Washington, play in Baltimore, and barnstorm through Montgomery County, all those singers who came to Washington, came to Baltimore, they all performed at the Dewdrop Inn. And Billy tells me that there wasn't any air conditioning in the Dewdrop Inn, so the doors in the front and the back were both open. So as a kid, he could sit out behind the Dewdrop Inn, and he could hear the greatest singers in the world performing there. So I know that the Montgomery history can help you find somebody who can do what I'm doing about baseball, about the Dewdrop Inn, and I assure you, you want to learn about the Dewdrop Inn. So in the early 60s, with the enactment of fair housing and public accommodation laws at the local and national levels, blacks gained entertainment options. Baseball was no longer the go-to entertainment option for Montgomery's blacks. So obviously nobody wants to go back. Everybody knows that baseball and public life are better when everybody gets to participate. But some civic strength in these small communities was lost when these baseball opportunities passed. And so for these African-American business leaders, you could watch baseball on TV, and now finally you could see black players. And so the interest in these the black sandlots diminished significantly. So it is a tragic irony, and this is true at a national level of the Negro Leagues, and it's true in Montgomery County of the black sandlots, that the tragic irony is that the long overdue integration of the white major leagues led to the death of the Negro Leagues, and the much delayed integration in Montgomery County killed these black community teams. So I would ask my friend Billy, when we did this 2021 presentation of Montgomery history, how do you celebrate something that was so undeniably wonderful, but only came into existence because of something so inexcusable? Now, much of the history I was looking for was bulldozed. Another confession of my ignorance and frailties was I spent about a half a day wandering the streets of Rockville trying to find, based on this historic sign and another one in a parking garage in Rockville that told me where the baseball field was, and I walked and I tried to pay attention to their directions, and I looked all over the place, and I wasn't finding it, and it wasn't where I couldn't believe it was where they were telling me it was. And so at about that time, I met Billy Gordon, the guy who's helped me so much with this, and I was like, Billy, I'm dying. I spent 4 hours wandering Rockville. I cannot find this field. Where is it? Oh, it's where the Rockville Walgreens is right now. I could have saved myself 3 hours if I'd met Billy, a month earlier. So if you go to the Cabin John Shopping Center, you're not going to realize that Eddie Dove's little ballpark was back in where the townhouses are up above the Cabin John Shopping Center. So these places, the Walgreens, the Cabin John Shopping Center, they were sacred ground in the black communities of Montgomery County back in the day. So as the walls of segregation fell and the opportunities for blacks widened, the black sandlot teams faded away. And it could have all been lost. So the two big history lessons here for me, first, of course, we learned the shame of segregation produced this incredible number of outstanding athletes in the period who were denied, white and black, denied playing against the best competition in the nation and the best competition in our county because they were segregated. To those who proudly tout, as I spent a long time working for Ike Leggett, proudly touting Montgomery's admirable diversity and our commitment to treating everybody with dignity and respect, it's important and it's humbling to know it just wasn't always so. And in my lifetime, it wasn't so. Now, the shame of segregation meant that Billy Gordon and I grew up in two completely separate worlds. And almost 70 years later, my friend Eddie Dove is still wistful. He told me a story, and you could just feel the pain that he didn't have a chance to face a former Baltimore Oriole pitcher named Steve Barber. They were growing up in the same community, and they couldn't play each other. And it wasn't just the black community that lost out. I mean, Steve Barber lost out, but I felt like I lost out. I'm a teenager in these years when these Negro League teams, the greatest baseball players in the world, are playing 10 miles from where I lived. I had no idea about it. My dad loved baseball. He took me to Griffith Stadium all the time. And I now realize I missed out on not just not just terrific baseball, but a greater understanding of my community. And second, we learned, and this is the story that I'm most proud of for this community, just the extraordinary resilience and the entrepreneurial spirit of the black community. Not allowed to share and be part of all these wonderful things that were happening in Montgomery County that I took for granted, and they couldn't. And they're given the lemon of segregation, and they made the lemonade, and they made some other beverages. So I was determined I wanted to do more than just this 2021 Montgomery history presentation to help keep this story alive. So John Daniel and I have a friend named Bill Hickman, who is the a historian of the Big Train baseball team that I started. And he spent several years looking into this. He started a Rockville Baseball Hall of Fame and wanted to make sure that it represented all the talent, not just the white talent of the, back in the day. And he discovered Clarence Pint Israel, who was Montgomery County's greatest Negro League star. And so Bill wrote the definitive history of Pint for the Society of American Baseball Research, all the stat geeks in baseball. And Bill successfully nominated, it took us a few years, but we got Pint in the Montgomery County Sports Hall of Fame in 2022. And there is a park in Rockville where Pint lived his whole life that is in his name. In the article that Bill wrote for the 2022 Big Train Souvenir Program, he introduced Pint this way. He beat out an all-star second baseman to win a starting job with a Negro League baseball team. He held off a Hall of Fame third baseman, National Hall of Fame third baseman, who tried to take away his spot at the hot corner on his Negro League team. He was the starting third baseman for the 1946 Negro League World Series champions. He was penciled into his starting lineups by 3 managers who are now in the National Baseball Hall of Fame. So he was a local guy who spent his entire life in Rockville. As with the other Negro League stars from the county, Russell Awkward and Bill Williams are 2, they realized that segregation denied them the opportunity to play at the highest levels and make a decent living. It was tough out there in the Negro Leagues. And Pint returned home to raise a family and compete in these black sandlot games in Montgomery County. Pint devoted his life to helping Montgomery's youth he created something called the Black Angels Boys Club and other organizations. So my friend Billy Gordon has told me Pint was his mentor. Pint was his guy. He adored Pint Israel. He was the guy that everybody looked up to. He worked as the biological laboratory technician at the National Institutes of Health. He was the player manager of an integrated NIH baseball team. And as I say, in 1988, right after he died, the mayor and council of Rockville dedicated a park in his name in the Lincoln Park neighborhood. So John Daniel, of course, has this T-shirt on tonight. And if the lights were on, we'd show him. But we decided to hold a first annual, this is 2022, Clarence Pint Israel Juneteenth Classic at our Shirley Povich Field. And so every fan who showed up at that game, and John shows up at every Big Train game, got a cool T-shirt with this with this logo on. For the 2023 game, this is my man Eddie Dove, and I'm interviewing him at the 2023 game, and we both have this jersey on. But the cool part was every Big Train player. I bought jerseys for every Big Train player. We only wear them once a year, so we'll be able to wear these. They celebrate the Scotland Eagles. That's the closest team to our ballpark, Povich Field in Cabinjan Regional Park. So all of the Big Train players every Juneteenth wear an Eagles replica jersey of the 1954 Scotland Eagles team. And we did give, which is really cool, all the fans a not quite as fancy a jersey as I have, but a T-shirt that says Eagles on it. That was very popular. So in 2024, we had a fabulous baseball exhibit. For those of you who are a little more adventuresome and like this baseball, I was astonished, but I met a guy years ago who had a great collection of memorabilia, of Black History memorabilia, Negro League memorabilia, and he brought it to Povich Field one day, and we displayed it. And then I kind of lost touch with him. And then somebody told me, well, he had a museum. And I was like, how does he have a museum? It turned out the Baltimore County executive a decade or so ago really was into this guy's collection. And I'm forgetting the name of it now, but one of the brand new, 2-year, 3-year-old public libraries in Baltimore County, all the, 4 stories high, and all the areas, the common areas around the elevators in the library had this guy's memorabilia. And Baltimore County gave him enough money. This is a very high quality baseball exhibit. So if you're a baseball crazy person like me, Google that and check it out. But they bring their stuff to Povich Field for our Juneteenth game every year. And we had really fun. I've been involved with this baseball game, got some people interested. I don't know if you know the story of the Scotland church that got completely flooded out, and it was about to be having to be demolished. It's this great historic, tiny little church in the Scotland community, and it was the victim of Jim Crow. The state highway people built the highway and let the developers build the townhouses so that all the water, when it rained, would flood the church. And in one of the big floods a few years ago, the church got almost wiped out. Anyway, they are rebuilding it. Mitch Rails and other people and the Marriotts and the county are putting money into that church. It's going to be fantastic. It's all being rebuilt. But we created a Juneteenth festival to celebrate the Juneteenth holiday that's now a federal holiday, but also to raise money for the Scotland community. And they asked me, and I'd already done the Juneteenth Classic, you want the baseball game to be involved? And yeah, sure. So we became part of the festival in the first year. And then the second year they told me they're going to shoot off fireworks on Juneteenth. And they're going to shoot them off in the little softball field just beyond Povich Field. They did. But our game starts at 7, and they wanted the fireworks to go off at 9:30, and the game was still being played, and I wasn't going to turn out the lights and turn off the baseball game. So we were playing the baseball game, and they're shooting off the fireworks. It was so cool. We are going to start the game at 6 this year. So I have a Black History Month breaking news for you. No one's heard this, all right? We this summer, because of the work of my friend Bill Heckman, and because I'm a baseball memorabilia junkie, we are going to do a Pint Israel bobblehead giveaway at our Juneteenth Classic, along with, I've just confirmed the fireworks are going to be on. Now, last year, I didn't have the money to do this and didn't have the insight to do this. So last year, what we did is we made a card. I created a card to try to look like it would have looked back in the day. And this is Pint. And Pint is jumping up off the ground. And I got a guy who's making a bobblehead for me that has Pint in exactly that position with a little rod under it so it looks like he's off the ground with a big smile on his face. And we've got Newark. He played for the Newark Eagles. This is the year they won the national championship. So we are going to give away one of the coolest bobbleheads you have ever seen. I'm about to close and ask you for questions, but I know the first two questions. So the first question obviously you're going to ask me is, how did Clarence Israel get the name Pint? Okay, he's 5'5". So they called him Half Pint. And his son Bobby explained it this way in the 2001 interview for Montgomery Community Television documentary. Somebody saw him in center field and yelled, "Look at that little half pint out there playing." And over time, it was Pint that stuck. Now, I know the second question is going to be, how can I get involved and start and support the Big Train baseball team? So I have two things for you. I am counting on John Daniel organizing a Asbury picnic. I'm hoping on June 19th. So you can come out and see this fabulous display of memorabilia, but also experience the fireworks and get one of these. I know you guys love to have these fabulous. No, I know you've given them all away, but you need to bring a bobblehead back to your place. The other is I have the perfect summer volunteer job for a baseball fan. We want to create a bullpen club that is, when I go to spring training games in Florida, I am greeted by like 20 people our age in really nice looking shirts of the local major league team. And they are, how may I help you? They're welcomers, they're ushers, and they really create a great experience. So we have a couple of people who are doing that, but I need more. So even if it's just 2 or 3 of you who'd be willing to go out 5 nights in June and July and get a cool shirt and get 10 free tickets so you can bring your spouse or your friend to the games, come back for other games and just watch them. But be a welcomer, be a greeter. So if you like people and you like baseball, I have not spent a lot of time selling Big Train here, but the way I describe Big Train is its small town charm and big league talent. So when the greatest thing that I've ever heard about what we built at Shirley Povich Field and for the Big Train is that John Orsman, the car guy, was the major fundraiser for this, and he told me, I think it was the second year, a friend came up to him and said, "Johnny, you know, when I come out to a Big Train game at Povich Field, I feel like I live in a small town." And I was like, that's just what I tried to create. That's just the experience that we all need. We live our busy lives and we got too much going on. It's great for kids, it's great for seniors, it's great for everybody. So if you're interested, I have a bribe, I think, maybe it's in my coat pocket. It's in my coat pocket. You can get one of these rare collector items, Clarence Pint Israel, if you will come up to me and talk to me after about the possibility of joining our bullpen club and being a Big Train volunteer. While we take questions, you probably have seen this mural. Have you in Rockville? You drive down. Anybody seen this in downtown Rockville? Anybody? I got one. That's it. It's this beautiful mural of all kinds of scenes in Rockville. What was the grocery store that was right there that just, I'm blanking on the name, but it's right on the wall of that in downtown Rockville. But this is basically what, this is in honor of the Rockville Black Sandlot team. So I think I have time for some questions. Do we get the lights so I can see who's asking me questions? Is that okay? Thank you. Any questions? We got mics, right? I got no takers. I need some takers.
Did any of the black Sandlot baseball teams ever play any of the white baseball teams here?
So I said earlier that Eileen McGuckian, have you had Eileen McGuckian speak here? Eileen McGuckian is the great Montgomery County historian focused on Rockville and everything. She knows everything about all this. In one of her books about Rockville, she does talk about a turn of the century, not the most recent turn of a century. There was a black-white game, and then they got away from that. When I talk to these guys, and there are not many of them still around who played in what I'm describing, they did not play against white players, for the most part. We got one here?
So were these teams self-coached? Did they learn on their own? How did they get to be so good?
That's a really good question. So these are basically pickup teams, and so I'm sure they were playing managers. I'm sure there was somebody, just like you guys run this event here, there was somebody there who was the leader, and they pulled people together. So there's nobody getting paid for any of this. This is pure community amateur baseball happening mostly, sometimes on Saturday afternoons, but predominantly Sundays after church. So it was like a community book club for sports people kind of thing. But some of these folks, so there's 3 or 4 of them from Montgomery County who actually played, Pint being the premier one, in the Negro League. So there was plenty of talent here.
First, thank you for the talk. 2 quick questions. First is, were those the kinds of caps that the players wore?
So that's going back further than I'm doubting, I'm doubting that in the time period that I'm talking about, they looked quite like that. Let me go back to one of those pictures.
Okay, that's more like...
So this is Eddie. Eddie's, our age. And so this is in the 50s and 60s they're wearing. So these guys, the ones before were older.
The other question, Sandlot, one of the pictures made it look like they had grass, and one of the drawings, that aerial
Sandlot's just a baseball term.
Do we know whether this famous picture does not have
So
any
look at
grass?
this. This looks like it's all dirt, right?
Do we know anything about the various ones in Montgomery County or not?
I wouldn't want to pretend that I could say exactly. I think that, so what is happening, you heard me tell Eddie's story about the chicken wire. So you got 5 black businessmen who were building something where they were trying to attract people, and they were charging money there. They were making money, and then they were making money after the game at the tavern. The rest of them, I think, is pretty much like I just tried to describe. It's the local people scrapping together. So I think these fields were pretty rugged, is my guess. I don't think you'd want to play there without a serious helmet, none of which they had. Anybody else?
What about player stats? Has any of that been recovered? And give us an idea what kind of a batting average that some of these guys had.
Thank you. So let me give you the good news, which is not about what I just talked about. But the Negro League stats, enormous work has gone on. So my friend Bill Hickman, our historian who wrote about Pint, he's a member, as I am, of the SABR, the Baseball Stat Geeks. Those folks have gone back, and it was a difficult job. They're finding little box scores in newspapers and scrapping them together. They have gotten the stats from the Negro League teams, the professional Negro League teams, not the teams I'm talking about. And they have gotten those stats and developed them to the point where Major League Baseball has now counted certain of the years of the Negro Leagues as major leagues. So if you might have noticed a couple of years ago, a whole bunch of people got added to all-time leaders in home runs or stolen bases or whatever, and that was because of this incredible work by these SABR people. I don't know how they've done it because I've seen some of these newspaper clips and stuff. Is that done for these teams? No. There's no stats. And I get that there are no stats, and I'm actually not even mad about that. I don't get that there weren't any, there's no photo, I've shown you 4 photos. There aren't 10 other photos of teams that I have. And they're all that okay, here's our team photo. There's no action photos. There's no programs. There's no tickets. There's no memorabilia, no sign from the concession stand. There's no sign that says Johnson Park. It's just so sad. And this is, what my friend said, that the history is being buried with these people. And that's why I think this is a cool project.
I used to live near that Scotland community, or drove by that church many times. I'm sorry to hear that it was just about ruined in a flood.
It's so sad.
I was just wondering about that community. Did the baseball teams have the effect continuing on, even after integration, of bringing the community together? Do they still have a close-knit community of black people in that area and some of these other areas?
So let's go back. So if I had better eyesight, I could go through these with you. Only a few of these communities are left. Rockville is entirely a parking lot. One of the ones I talked about earlier is elementary school. Our progressive friends in Tacoma Park, there was a field there, and the then mayor and city council in Tacoma Park decided to bulldoze that field and turn it into a public works department. So one of the pictures I didn't show you that I sometimes show is a picture of this public works department with a big ugly chain link fence around it, and there had been their community ballpark. So many of these, I told you that in Scotland, now it's a bunch of townhouses up past the Cabin John. So very few of these sites still exist. And Emery Grove is still an active community. Scotland is still an active community. Stewarttown. So maybe a third of the 36 communities that formed after slavery with formerly enslaved people still exist in some fashion, but much of it's just been rubbed out by the suburbs, which is why Johnson's Park is so cool. It's 3 miles from here. It's a park. It's in the woods. You can stand there next to the tennis courts and imagine that you were in a camp meeting ground back in, 75 years ago. And it's all there, and there's a nice little baseball field there. And when Hans Riemer was on the county council, he got some money for Montgomery Parks to try to do something and do more recognition than that one plaque that I showed you that'll probably be there. But most of these communities have been rubbed out, sadly. Can we have another round of applause for my friend Teresa? Teresa, thank you for everything you've done in Montgomery County. You are a superstar.
Bruce, it was under your direction, so I just wanted to help you. You brought me lots of memories, and I feel energized with your speech.
Thank you.
Oh, what a terrific talk that was. You said at the beginning that you would go to church in the morning, and then you take a break, and then go to the baseball in the afternoon. Were the churches really the central point for all of this happening? And then
after I came to the conclusion, and I wrote down for myself a sentence that said, the church, the school, and baseball were the 3 pillars of civic life in Black Montgomery County in the Jim Crow Montgomery County. And I looked at that and I said, I'm a baseball fanatic. I said, that couldn't be true. You can't compare baseball to the church and the school. And so I read that little sentence to a number of people who lived there, experienced that, and they said, that's exactly right. And again, it's sad. My friend Jim Offord said, it's because we didn't have anything else to do. So they made lemonade out of lemons.
beyond the local community, there was a great pitcher, about three churches away. Would they try to steal players? Or was there any trading going on, that sort of
I'll
thing?
bet they did. No, I'm sure those players moved around, and I'm sure there was some of that. But there was a lot of loyalty. Pint was on the Rockville Legion team, and they were the best team, and they played a lot of games at Johnson's Park, and they were the team the Negro Leagues wanted to play. So, yeah, I'll bet you that Pint was sort of a player manager. I'll bet you Pint stole. I don't want to disparage my friend Pint, but I'll bet he did. I'll bet some of that went on. Hey, thank you. Let me make one. How about, you got one more? One more. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I just wanted to point out that the mural is at the Dawson Market.
Thank you.
in
That's the name I
Rockville.
forgot. I ate so many lunches there and I forgot. And now,
North Washington Street.
sadly, on Washington Street. Thank you. And sadly, Dawson's is gone. But that mural is so cool. And drive by there and look at it, because I just took the baseball one, but there's an entire gorgeous mural of the history of Rockville. And do get Eileen McGuckie in to come talk to you about that. And you got to get a speaker on the Dewdrop Inn. The Dewdrop Inn, you cannot believe, just Google Dewdrop Inn when you get back to your place. And when you see the people who went through there, you're going to want to know more about it. So I do want you guys, John, you're organizing a picnic, right? There you go. So we want everybody to come out and see that. And if there's anybody who is interested in maybe working 5 games as a welcomer, usher, and be part of this incredible small town charm and big league talent. Oh, I forgot the big league talent. 24 of the guys who have played for Big Train that John has watched and knows have gone on to play in the major leagues. So you are seeing top flight players, college players, future major leaguers playing with wooden bats in a beautiful little setting, small town charm, and John will be there to greet you. All right, thank you.